Welcome to the Teaching Football Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Debates. Thank you for watching and sharing with your family and friends. And remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons at the end of this video. In this episode, we're going to look at why coaches coach. A lot of people think they know the answers to this, but there are some good, obvious reasons why coaches get into coaching. There are some obvious benefits, and there are even some rewards that are behind the scenes that a lot of people don't realize until they've stepped into that coaching role, even at the youth level. But there's also a downside to coaching. There's some very negative aspects to coaching, and there's even a very dark side to coaching, which are some of the reasons why coaches get out of coaching. So we're going to look at both sides of this and give you some ideas of both why coaches get into it, stay in it, and consider it a long-term career, and why some coaches do it for a few years and then abandon it. Coaches generally coach a sport for the love of the game. It doesn't matter if it's football, basketball, hockey, whatever it is, and it doesn't matter whatever level it is. It could be the professional level, college, high school, middle school, down to the youth level. But coaches coach because they enjoy the game, and they want to pass that enjoyment and that love of the game on to younger players or to other players. They can see it as a way to help kids get out of difficult circumstances, or maybe to help them benefit some long-term goals, like hopefully maybe getting a college scholarship that would enable a player to, even though they may not get to the professional level, maybe give them a pathway to get another rewarding career that may benefit them. Or maybe that player would even enjoy coaching. There's a couple of TV shows I want to talk about that are great benefits to coaching or show the all-encompassing aspects of coaching. One is a sitcom from the late 80s and into the 90s on Coach. It was usually on ABC. It's now in syndication in a bunch of different streaming services. But it follows Craig T. Nelson, who's the head coach at the fictional Minnesota State University. And it goes through, obviously, the typical sitcom type of situations where he gets himself into goofy areas or goofy situations, a lot of times outside of the season, that he has to deal with that are typical of every sitcom. But there are some different aspects to that sitcom that gives you a look at coaches beyond just the football field. For example, in that show, he has to deal with a daughter that he barely knows who now is going to college, partly to be closer to him and to get to know him. He has to deal with her relationship issues. He has to deal with his own relationship issues. And it gives you a sense of what coaches have to deal with outside of that football world. Coaches are people too. They have personal issues. They have deaths in the family. They have births in the family. They have birthdays. They have family birthdays. They have family events that sometimes they have to miss because of games or practices or because of commitments tied to their job. And it can be quite a stressful situation. And the TV show Coach addresses that in several different areas. It also shows some of the behind-the-scenes things that you don't see on a Sunday afternoon in an NFL game or a Saturday afternoon in a college game, dealing with players and personalities. In one of the early season episodes of Coach, he has to deal with a star player who's flouting the rules. And does he end up at the end of the season, does he risk a winning season by playing that player even though he broke the rules, but would that undermine his authority with the rest of the team? Or does the coach sit that star player and try to win with the players that he has? There's a quote from Joe Gibbs that I really like and I really enjoy that I think is appropriate here. Joe Gibbs, former head coach of the Washington Redskins, said to look for players with character and ability. But remember, character comes first. Yes, you can have players that aren't the most upstanding citizens. Every major college team has a couple of those. Every NFL team has a couple of those. And a lot of those teams have basically, in a sense, the quote-unquote choir boys, the players that don't do anything wrong or don't do anything bad. But having players of character shows that you have players that can have responsibility and be trusted both on the field and off the field. As a high school coach, middle school coach, I think coaches can emphasize the fact that players are student athletes, and the word student comes first before the athlete. If players can't be trusted to behave in school, be leaders in the school, get their work done on time, how can you trust them on the athletic field? And that's some of the issues that Coach dealt with also. TV show Coach also had to deal with varieties of success. And throughout the course of the series, his team continued to progress, get better, continuing to deal with situations, both personal and professional, till eventually he's offered a job of going to an NFL team. Again, a personal conflict for the coach. Does he stay at a program that he's built, or does he try to go to the next level and become a professional coach? I would recommend it. It's a good series. It's very enjoyable. It has some great moments. And there's some episodes that I find absolutely hilarious. There's one episode that I kind of connected with. It's an episode, I believe it's in season 6, that's called The Luck Stops Here. His team, the Minnesota State Screaming Eagles, the fictional team, is having success, and they're winning games that they shouldn't be winning. Other teams are making ridiculous mistakes. He has players that are stepping up, and role players and players that are doing things that they normally wouldn't do. And as a coach, you try to understand that. Sometimes you just have to ride with that luck and you have to roll with it. But you also have to remember at the back of your mind that at some point that luck is going to turn. And when it does, you have to help those players understand that and get through that situation. So there's a little bit of the upside and the downside of coaching. The TV show Coach is a great example of that. Another show that I like, which I think is an even better example of looking at the lives of coaches off the field, is the show Ted Lasso. I've mentioned that or referenced Ted Lasso in a few different videos. It's the first show that I've really seen where it really addresses what a coach goes through outside of their sport. Ted Lasso is an American football coach who goes to coach soccer in England, partly because his marriage is in trouble. So he gives his wife some space to hopefully help his marriage. Eventually, he and his wife, being across the ocean, do end up getting a divorce. But Ted is also dealing with being a parent to a young son. He's dealing with being in a foreign country. He's dealing with a press that the English press and their following of soccer can be rivaled by college football fans here in the US. He has to navigate those issues. He has to deal with his lack of knowledge of the game, but he's also using his personality and his background to connect with his players and build a culture. We've talked about that in an episode about culture. But as he's trying to connect with players, he has to look at what is best for the team and getting those players to be where they need to be as not just athletes, but as people. There's another quote that I like from former college coach Johnny Majors. He said, "The first thing a coaching staff must do is weed out selfishness. No program can be successful with players that put themselves above the team." And that's one thing that Ted does in his episodes, is he tries to get the players to understand what he's trying to do, what he's trying to build. And there's even a couple of different episodes where his assistant coach, Coach Beard, talks about what they're trying to build. Ted Lasso, in several episodes, says he doesn't care about winning or losing. He's trying to help these young men become the best version of themselves that they can be. And that's one of the benefits of coaching, is seeing those people develop, seeing your players develop into the responsible people that you hope they can be. But all the while Ted is doing that, there's that dark side. He's dealing with his divorce, other issues that come up within the team and outside of the team. He has to deal with his ex-wife potentially getting engaged and possibly remarried. And towards the end of the series, or towards the end of season 3, while his team is having an unbelievable run of success, he's not happy. He's struggling with his personal issues. And one of the episodes later in season 3, it starts out with the voiceover saying that Ted Lasso must be the happiest man in England right now. And they show a picture of Jason Sudeikis, who plays Ted, with a frown on his face, with basically a blank stare. So while his team is having success, that personal side is also something that affects coaches just as affects anyone else. So now let's look at the upside of coaching, the reasons why coaches coach. For starters, the love of the game, as I mentioned before. Coaches at whatever level enjoy the game. I was a high school coach for a brief time, for about 7 seasons, and part of it was because I loved the game. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, literally grew up across the street from the football field, and got to watch games every Friday night that I could. I just enjoy the game. I love the game. I love various aspects of the game. Physicality of it, the mental side of it, all parts of the game. The next reason why a lot of people get into coaching is money. It's a benefit. While I never got up to that high level of major college football or NFL football where you can make a substantial amount of money and have a good career to take care of your family and your kids and your grandkids and on down the line, most coaches at the lower levels, lower college levels, high school level, middle school level, they don't do it for the money. And even some of the coaches at the professional level, the money is a byproduct of their love of the game. Another byproduct is their public status, being known. Coaches are people too. They like being recognized, getting that recognition for doing positive things, that public persona, being asked to be at speaking engagements, but getting that positive feedback and being a well-known member and recognized. Some coaches enjoy that, some don't. Those are a couple of the outside things that people can see the coaches get. But some things that some coaches enjoy that you don't see are helping players develop. Like Ted Lasso said, he wants to help these young men become the best versions of themselves they can be. As a high school coach, I coached at a small school in South Dakota. I got to see some of my players from middle school all the way up through high school and graduation, and seeing how they developed as people and trying to instill responsibility in them on the field and off the field, and seeing how they developed and what they became with their lives is a great benefit. Some coaches enjoy the control, being in charge. Most coaches at some point try for some type of a head coaching job because then it's their program and they can have control of hopefully how things go. Sometimes coaches forget that they don't have total control and they have to deal with issues along the way. The mental game. I referenced this in a previous episode of how football is like chess and there's much more of a mental aspect of the game. Many coaches enjoy that battle of wits with an opposing offensive and defensive coordinator, trying to come up with a new wrinkle or a new twist that will confuse their opponent and give them an advantage. And that is just as much a part of the enjoyment of the game as helping players get better, coaching, and getting achievements. Achieving your dream. Most coaches, if they said that it wasn't their dream to win a championship, I would say they're most likely not telling you the whole truth. Achieving that dream of having your own team and your own control and instituting your program is something that many coaches aspire to. And that dream oftentimes includes a championship, which leads us to the last point, the peak of your profession. Having the respect of your peers for winning that championship, for being the best that you can be, and helping your players get to that best level, whether it's helping them become the best person that they can be, or whether it's winning that championship. Once you have that ring, once you have that title, it's something that nobody can ever take away from you. It'll help you and your players remember that at one point, even if it might have been at the high school level, at one point you were the best at what you did. And those are a lot of the reasons why coaches get into coaching and why it's such a fun profession and why it's such an enjoyment of dealing with players, dealing with fans sometimes, dealing with the press can be fun at times. One thing that I miss as a coach is that camaraderie of dealing with the players. Yes, the wins and losses were nice, and I had the pleasure of actually getting a high school state championship. It was at the very smallest level of the state of South Dakota, but I was still able to hit that pinnacle of success, be that peak, being at the best at that level. But along with that, you also get the downside of coaching. There is a negative aspect. Some people think that they know and understand what that aspect is, but there can be some very dark turns when it comes to coaching. Some of the reasons that coaches get out of coaching are personal burnout, having to be at your best and do that all of the time. Coaches do get burned out. And one of the things that gets them that burnout or that takes them down that road is public perception. Your team might be having success like Ted Lasso's, but you have issues beyond the game that are affecting you, that maybe are off your game. Sometimes the game is an escape, but sometimes even in the midst of a game, personal issues can creep into your head and take effect. Whatever you do, there's that public perception of, hey, you weren't good enough this week. What's going on with you? There's a lack of privacy. By being well known, you have that public persona that some coaches like and is an upside. There is a flip side to that. That lack of privacy, that lack of, in a sense, protection. So I knew a college basketball coach who was very successful, but he couldn't go out in town. He coached in a small college town where the college men's basketball team was the big game in town. Everyone knew who he was. He couldn't go grocery shopping with his wife, especially during the season, because people would stop and want to talk about the game. So he either dropped out his wife off at the grocery store and went back for her later, or he sat out in the car. Outside of season, people would ask him how recruiting is going. What is the team looking like for the following year? And there were times when he just wanted to get away from it, but he couldn't because there was that lack of privacy. Everybody wanted to know everything about the team for the past season, in season, the coming season, whatever it might be. Coaches have to deal with that sometimes, all the time. The constant criticism. Coaches are constantly criticized. You have the Monday morning quarterback or the armchair quarterback or whatever you want to call it. In a football game, if a coach goes for it on 4th and 1 and doesn't make it, well, everybody says, I would have gone for it, or I would have run a different play, or I would have kicked the field goal, or I would have punted, or I would have done whatever. Or if a coach punts, well, I would have gone for it and I would have made it. The coach is scared, he's chicken, or he's too much of a risk taker, whatever it might be. There's constant criticism on every decision a coach makes. And it doesn't matter if it's a play in the first quarter or a play at the end of the game. There's that constant criticism. And to be a coach, you have to have a very thick skin to let that criticism roll off your back. As Vince Lombardi said, if you aren't fired with enthusiasm, you'll be fired with enthusiasm. If you can't be at that high level all the time and can't be enthusiastic about that coaching job because of the constant criticism, the rabid fan base, and the things that are going on personally and professionally, you're going to end up losing your job and you'll be fired with enthusiasm. Speaking of fans, that rabid fan base, there are websites all over following every aspect of college football. ESPN is talking about now how juniors sign their letters of intent or commit to colleges at the basketball or for football, basketball. Some of them, they even go down to middle school levels. Kids are giving their commitments. Fan bases will follow everything, every little scrap of information about your team. And it doesn't matter if it's a college team or a professional team. Anything that fans can watch and absorb throughout the course of the season, they'll follow and they'll analyze. And if you don't get a particular recruit or don't get somebody out of a transfer portal or a team doesn't sign somebody, the coaching staff, sometimes the GM or the athletic director will catch some heat, but it's generally the head coach, but that's part of the job of being a head coach. The college level, the constant coaching and recruiting, like we talked about in previous episodes with the transfer portal and the end of the season, always being on the go. Coaches have to recruit. They have to recruit in season while they're trying to prepare for a game. They have to recruit right away out of the season. They have to try and get recruits to commit. And the high school kids now are flipping their commitments quite constantly. And the transfer portals also are not helping with that. Now you can recruit a kid who comes in as a freshman, and if they don't start right away, well, they're going to transfer to another school where they may have success, they may not. So there's that constant battle of coaches always having to fight, always having to follow, and always having to stay in that coaching persona. And oftentimes, even in the off season, it's hard for coaches to get out of that coaching persona. At the NFL level, you have the combine followed by the draft. So once the NFL season is over at what used to be January, now it's almost the middle of February when the Super Bowl is over. Right after that, just within a couple of weeks, you have the NFL combine, where potential players who could be in the draft have what some people call the underwear Olympics. They go to. It's usually held in Indianapolis. It may be changing in the next couple of years, where players meet with teams. They do a variety of on-field drills, do physicals, do medical checks. But one of the big things is meeting with teams individually, having interviews with them, and trying for the teams to try to get a 10-minute read on a player's personality and what they're like. And then right after that, you start having visits with these potential draft prospects. Then you go into the draft, and the draft has become an animal of its own, where people follow the draft as rapidly, and in some cases even more rapidly than they follow the NFL season. And they want to know why you drafted that player, why you didn't draft that player. San Francisco this past year drafted a running back in the 3rd round that many people said he shouldn't go before the 6th round. But San Francisco thought he was one of the better running backs. And Kyle Shanahan right away got criticism for that. But it's a draft. The player isn't going to be on the field for 6 months, where he's not in games that matter. And then after the draft, more constant coaching, where the NFL teams have their off-season workouts, their voluntary workouts, their required workouts. It goes into June. Then the players and coaches get a little bit of a break at the end of June into July, and then mid-July it starts up again with training camps. College football, after the season's over, you get through all the transfer portals, then you get into spring practices. Oftentimes March, April into May, you have the spring games. And sometimes players leave after that. Sometimes they'll come in after that. Then college coaches have a little bit more of a window in May and June for breaks, but there's recruiting that can go on in some of these during select times. Then they get into their college football season, and it's go, and it's go, and it's go, and it never stops. And that leads to a last significant point, which is family sacrifice. What families have to sacrifice for a coach to have that career at that high level. Many coaches at the major college level or the NFL level have had divorces. Not all of them. Sometimes these coaches have difficult family lives where they don't know their kids very well. I read somewhere, I don't recall the reference, where Mike Macdonald, head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, he has a young son at home. He would schedule 30 minutes a week to spend time with his son. Some people think, well, yeah, he's a devoted father. He's scheduling 30 minutes a week. He's only being around his son for 30 minutes a week, potentially. Maybe a little bit more time before a game, after a game, maybe on Saturday. If it's a home game, maybe if they have a bye week, he can spend more time with his son. But that's the life of a high-level coach, whether it's college football or the NFL. There's a lot of family sacrifice. Many coaches' wives end up at times basically being single parents. And if you're at the higher level, you have that financial stability of one person working where the spouse can take care of the kids on their own. But at mid-level programs, lower-level college programs, at high school programs, there are teams that have just as rabid fan bases, but the coaches aren't making enough money to support their family by themselves, so the spouse has to work. So now what is a small level college coach supposed to do? He's got to get out on the recruiting trail. He's got to look at the transfers. He's got to get ready for the games, but he's also having to be a parent and a spouse and dealing with those issues. So there's a lot of good things and there's a lot of bad things with coaching. I didn't even mention some other issues here. Dealing with star players. Ted Lasso, in an episode where they get a star player in, how does that star player fit in with the rest of the team? Does it cause conflict in the locker room? Or does it cause conflict outside the locker room? And at one point, Ted Lasso's team was having success with this new star player on the field. Yes, they were having success on the field, but behind the scenes, in the locker room, things weren't always great. And when that player abruptly leaves after the team has some struggles, Ted has to, in a sense, put the pieces back together of the shattered psyche of this team that was having success, now is having failure, and now what can you do? There's another quote I have here from former Oklahoma coach Bud Wilkinson. His father's advice to him was, no matter how successful he is, every coach eventually reaches a point where a lot of people want somebody else. This is incredibly true, and I've experienced this firsthand. As I mentioned previously, I was part of a high school championship team. I was the assistant coach. I was the defensive coordinator. We won the state championship. We won the game 42-6, and the team we beat was averaging 45 points a game, and we shut them down. That spring, I was talking to another assistant coach from our area, and he ran into the parent of one of our players on that championship team. And that parent thought that our entire coaching staff should be fired. Head coach, myself, and another assistant. We all should be fired because we didn't know what we were doing. We just finished an undefeated season. 3 of our 4 playoff wins were blowout wins. And the one that wasn't, we won by a single point over a team that, if they had beaten us, they probably would have won the state championship. And in fact, they won the state championship at our class the following season. So they were a very good team themselves. But this parent of one of our players thought that our coaching staff should be fired and we should bring in new people. Even though our last game was a state championship win, and we won convincingly 42-6. The other assistant coach that was telling me this, who was from a different school. He wasn't the assistant coach that I worked with. He was from a different school. He said he got so mad at that parent that he actually had to leave so he didn't punch him in the face. This is what coaches have to deal with. While you can have an incredible amount of success, I'm sure there were people that were not happy with something that Mike Macdonald did after he won the Super Bowl. I'm sure there were some parents or players that weren't happy with Curt Cignetti after he led Indiana to the national championship. So while you can have all the financial success, the recognition, and you can hit the peak of your profession as a coach by winning a championship at whatever level you're at, whether it's a Super Bowl, the college football national championship, or a low-level state championship in the state of South Dakota. You can have that success, but there's that dark side, that downside. And it can get even very nasty. A couple years ago, Ohio State won the national championship. They completed a great playoff run. But in the big game against Michigan, they lost. That was the 4th consecutive loss for Ohio State to Michigan in that rivalry game. Head coach Ryan Day received death threats for not winning a football game. There were people that threatened to harm his children because his team did not win a football game. So there can be a very dark side, very nasty side. While people love and support teams when they're good, what happens when things turn bad? That's why a lot of coaches get out of coaching. It's because of that nasty side that fans can get to. So we need to respect coaches. We need to remember that coaches are people. That while they're having a down season, they might be having personal success. While they might be having a great sports season, their personal life might be in shambles. So we have to look at how things are going in the big picture. Let's give some coaches some space. They're people too, and they coach the game because they love the game. I myself love the game of football. Unfortunately, I was not able to continue my coaching career. But for those coaches that stick with it, congratulations to you. Keep enjoying it. Keep doing the good work and help your players develop and become great people. Not just great players, but great people. This has been the Teaching Football Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Debates. Thank you for watching and sharing with your family and friends. Remember to hit that like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you on our next episode.